Make a difference. So our next featured guest in Notes to Nono is admired all over the world, and more particularly in Latin America, as a hard-working, honest and resilient example of leadership and success. Rosalia Arteaga Serrano is the former president and vice president of the Republic of Ecuador, a current TV presenter, author of several books, an activist, and founder of the educational nonprofit, the Fidal Foundation. Now, I wouldn't be exaggerating if I were to say that Rosalia seemingly possesses an undying energy that she has used throughout her life to make this world, and particularly her home country of Ecuador, a better place. If you haven't already done so, please listen to the very first episode of this podcast, where I had the great privilege of talking to her. And I hope that the snippets that you will hear will really give you a profound idea of what a unique person Rosalia is. Her advice to always make the difference, no matter how difficult things are, is one that we can all take to heart. So I sincerely hope you will enjoy Notes to Nono 3, Make the Difference with Rosalia Arteaga Serrano.
I always feel that I don't have enough time for do what I want to do, and I start very early in the morning and I am working until late, but I don't feel it like a work because I'm enjoying it so much, like giving a speech, writing, or doing stuff in my foundation or other organizations, that I feel that switching from one field to other field, it makes me more in the capability to do things because I switch from one to other. Maybe if I dedicate my whole time to one activity, I will not be so productive like I feel doing that in my everyday life. I am dedicating a lot of time to talk with young people from Mexico, Mexican people, or from Argentina, or from India, or Pakistan, or people from different countries in Europe, in Latin America, in Asia, in Africa, and it is fantastic. I think that I get a lot of energy talking with young people, with all the creativeness, with the challenges, with the participation that they are providing, and this is fantastic. The situation that we experienced like a family started when I had a boy. I had Jerónimo in Spanish. He was my second boy. I had already one. And when I realized that something was happening, my father is a medical doctor, and he was the pediatrician of Jerónimo, and he cannot at that time find the words to tell me that my baby was not doing well. At the beginning, he has to be in an incubator on the clinic, at the hospital, and apparently he has some problems to breathe. But after a while, he was okay. We take him with us to the home, and I started to feel the difference between my previous kid, because probably if he was the first one, I didn't notice that something was happening. He was very slow because I feed him with the milk, and I was feeling that he cannot do it in an easy way. And finally, I talked to my father, and he says, I know that something is happening. If you don't tell me what's happening, I will find another doctor. And my father was crying. He was a very successful medical doctor, a pediatrician, as I told, very successful in my city, in the south part of Ecuador. And he told me, I don't know how to say to you that Jerónimo is a Down syndrome kid. And it was a very hard situation. Remember that it was at the beginning of the 80s. At that time, most of the families, when they have a kid, at least in Ecuador and in some countries, it was like something not to show, not to talk about. But at the beginning, I make the question, why it's happening to me? Why it's happening to my family? But I think after a while, maybe 1 day, 2 days, I start to ask, why not to me? Because it happens in many families around the world. And probably we are prepared to receive Jerónimo at home. And we start to build our lives around Jerónimo, and to provide him with all the support and the tenderness, and finding that he will be happy forever, because Down syndrome, they are smiling kids, they are happy unless you hurt them. And I feel, okay, probably when I feel what I want for my kids, for my sons and a girl that I have, I want them to be happy. But with Jerónimo, I learned that he will be always happy with us, with some limitations, but also with the bright of smiling face and the tenderness. And, I said we can build a home around him. But suddenly, after some months, he started to feel bad. We consult not only to my father, but other doctors, and he had cardio problem, but he had problem with the lungs, with other parts of his body, and they cannot do anything. Little by little, he was losing life, and finally, when he was 10 months old, he passed away. I feel that my life was going to an end. I was feeling that I cannot support the amount of suffering that I had. But at the same time, I had a boy, and I was pregnant of my third children. I was pregnant of Manuela, and I say, I have to live for them also, and also for us. And I found a way to put, like in a cathartic book, all my feelings, and I wrote the book Jerónimo, feeling that I can help others, especially parents of young kids, Down syndrome kids, to understand what's the meaning of having such a wonderful gift that a Down syndrome kid is, because for me it was a gift. I insisted to get published this book because I feel that it can help. And through the years, I feel that it helps a lot of families. And I wrote a second book that is called Other Jerónimos, because I get to know other stories of families and kids with Down syndrome or paralysis or other situations. And I feel that I can describe the feelings, because it's a book not about science. It's only about feelings of love, of tenderness, of hope, even with the bad situations that we can have. I think it's the biggest challenge that I have in life, and these situations make me strong. And why I say that, because every time that I have some complication in my life, some situation or personal or like head of state, I compare it with losing a baby, and I said, okay, things are going to be okay. We are working on the solutions, and it makes me and give me the sense of strong, of possibility to help others that I always feel, even now, after all these years that passed, and I feel the same. And my position like woman, it was really hard at that time, and I feel that even now it's not easy for a woman to fight in the political arena or even in other fields. But at that time, I'm talking at the end of the last century, it was much harder here in Latin America and in Ecuador. Then, I was vice president. I was president of the Republic. I suffered a coup d'etat. It has to happen more than 20 years after these events, and they finally put my portrait on the gallery of the former presidents of Ecuador after almost 20 years that it happens. And it never happens with a man, because in Ecuador we had a lot of coup d'etats and situations, and they usually recognize immediately the situation. But in my case, it happens after 20 years.
How did that make you feel when your portrait was kind of included in that gallery?
It was fantastic, because I didn't know that. It was a friend because I knew that a group of women were protesting about this discrimination against me. I didn't say put my portrait there, but groups of women starting to send letters to the president. And finally, he decided that it was justice. They have to do that. but I didn't know when it happens. And because it was not a ceremony, they just put it on the wall. But some person that came from Argentina visited the palace in Quito, and he sent me a picture. He didn't know about all these antecedents. He sent me a picture, and I saw, oh, my portrait is there. And I talked it with my sister and some other person, and this friend of us put on Facebook and put the portrait of Rosalia is on the palace. And it was an amazing movement of the press and the people saying, finally, it was done. Well, and I received an invitation, of course, to go to the palace with my family, see how it was. And it was really amazing because it was all male on the walls, and I am still now the only one female in this position. I talk a lot with women leaders, and the advice is make the difference, because we had such an amount of problems, especially with corruption in our countries, that I feel women can make the difference, but only if we want, and we have to get prepared for that. Then make the difference is the advice that I always say to women in politics. Make the difference.
If you liked this episode of the Teach Pitch podcast, then it would mean the absolute world if you could share it with your friends and or give it a short review on your preferred podcast platform. The more you share your ideas about these interviews, the more people will find out about them. So do let us know what you think. We'd be very, very grateful.
Special thanks to Kevin MacLeod for our beautiful theme music, La Grande Chase. This podcast was produced and edited by Natalie Piles. Project coordination by Inva Cheney.